For thousands of years, the Great Pyramids have risen from the sands, silent, eternal, unyielding. We were told they were built by slaves, whipped and broken under the desert sun. But what if that story there is the greatest lie in history? Step with me into ancient Egypt. Walk beside the men and women who raised eternity, not with chains, but with sweat, skill, and pride. This is the hidden life of the workers who built the pyramids. The pyramids were not born from misery. They rose from sweat, from skill, from pride. For centuries, their truth was buried beneath a myth, but today, their voices return. If this story changed what you thought you knew about history, share it, subscribe to our channel, and together we will bring forgotten lives back to life.
The pyramids of Giza were built more than 4,000 years ago, during the reigns of pharaohs Khufu, Khafre, and Menkaure. For centuries, people repeated the story that slaves, dragged from conquered lands, built these massive monuments. But excavations in the 20th century revealed something shocking. The workers were not slaves at all, but ordinary Egyptians, recruited from villages across the Nile Valley. The workers who built the pyramids were not random laborers. They were organized into teams of about 40 men each, with leaders, scribes, and specialists. Some carved stone, others hauled blocks, others prepared tools or food. Their work was precise, coordinated, and driven by skill, not by the whip. Every few months, new groups of workers arrived from villages along the Nile. They came as part of a rotation system, working for the pharaoh as a form of tax and duty. This was not slavery, it was service to the state, a way of contributing to something greater than themselves. And in return, their families at home were supplied with grain and resources from the royal storehouses. Archaeologists discovered large workers' villages near the pyramids, with houses, bakeries, breweries, and even cemeteries. These were not prisons for slaves, they were communities, built to support tens of thousands of laborers who came to work on the King's project. The pyramids themselves took decades to complete. The Great Pyramid of Khufu, the largest of them all, required an estimated 20 years of labor. Not endless suffering, but careful, step-by-step progress, with workers returning season after season, generation after generation to continue the King's vision. Archaeologists have uncovered remarkable clues to their daily lives. Bones of cattle and sheep show that workers ate meat regularly. Vast storage rooms were found filled with pottery jars and bread molds. Inscriptions list rations carefully distributed, proof of an organized system that kept thousands fed and healthy. Inside these villages, remains of bread ovens and massive vats for brewing beer show that workers were supplied with daily rations. Records and bones confirm they ate bread, drank beer, and even received meat, a luxury in ancient Egypt. This was not the diet of slaves. It was the food of citizens, contributing to a national project. The workers were not only builders, they were also fathers, brothers, and sons. Their families often lived nearby. Children grew up in the shadow of the rising pyramids, watching their parents help create one of the wonders of the world. Women provided food and water, wove cloth for clothing, and supported the workforce in countless unseen ways. Thousands fed and healthy. Festivals brought moments of joy. When milestones were reached, beer was poured freely, music played, and songs of praise to the pharaoh filled the air. For the workers, these were not just monuments to kings. They were monuments to their own courage, endurance, and unity. Even today, the evidence of their hands remains. Fingerprints pressed into clay bricks, tool marks carved into stone blocks, scribbles in red paint, naming the teams who lifted the stones into place. These marks remind us that the pyramids were not created by slaves in silence, but by people, leaving traces of their humanity for us to discover. The cemeteries tell an even deeper truth. Workers who died during construction were buried in tombs near the pyramids, simple but honorable graves. They were laid to rest beside the monuments they helped create, sometimes with jars of beer and bread for the afterlife. No slave would ever receive such treatment. The myth of slavery endured for centuries because it was easy to believe. Monuments so immense must have required brutality, people thought, but the truth is far more powerful. The pyramids stand not as symbols of oppression, but as monuments to organization, community, and the will of a civilization determined to touch the sky. And so, when we look at the pyramids today, we must see more than the pharaohs who rest within. We must see the thousands of ordinary Egyptians whose hands carved, hauled, and raised these stones. Their names are lost to time, but their legacy stands taller than empires. They were not slaves, they were builders of eternity, and their story still lives in every stone that touches the sky. Skeletons revealed healed bones and even amputations that had been treated. This proves they had medical care. Injured workers were not discarded. They were cared for and allowed to live out their lives. This is clear evidence that they were valued, not exploited as slaves. Even the smallest details reveal the workers' presence. Archaeologists have uncovered fingerprints pressed into clay bricks, human touch, still visible after 4,000 years. Tool marks carved deep into limestone blocks show where chisels once struck with rhythm and precision. And on certain stones, red paint scribbles survive. Names of teams, quick notes left in the midst of labor. These traces prove that the pyramids were not the work of slaves hidden in silence, but of people, leaving behind their humanity carved into stone. On the stones of the pyramids themselves, graffiti written by the workers has been found. Teams gave themselves names like the Friends of Khufu and the Drunkards of Menkaure. These were groups of men proud of their labor, leaving behind their marks for history to see. So, where did the slavery story come from? Historians believe it began with the Greek writer Herodotus, centuries after the pyramids were built. He described slaves building Egypt's monuments, and later cultures repeated his words. Over time, the myth grew stronger than the truth. For centuries, the myth of slavery endured because it seemed easy to believe. How else, people asked, could monuments so vast be built without cruelty? To many, chains and whips felt like the only explanation. But the truth is far more powerful. These pyramids rose not from brutality, but from organization, community, and the determination of a nation united under its pharaoh. That truth is harder to imagine, but it is the truth the sands of Giza reveal. But today, archaeology corrects the record. The pyramids were built not by slaves, but by tens of thousands of skilled workers. They were organized in teams, supported by their government, and honored in death. Their lives were hard, their work backbreaking, but they were not chained in misery. They were citizens of Egypt, building monuments that would outlast empires. And so when we look at the pyramids today, we must see not just the pharaohs entombed inside, but the thousands of ordinary Egyptians whose hands shaped eternity. Their names are mostly lost, but their legacy is written in stone. They were not slaves, they were builders of a dream that still towers over the desert more than 4,000 years later.
And so, the truth of history speaks louder than the myths. The pyramids were not the work of slaves, but of a people united, determined to leave their mark upon eternity. Here at The Forgotten Civilization, we bring you stories that reveal the power, the mystery, and the hidden truths of our ancient past. If you've enjoyed this journey, don't forget to subscribe, share, and ring the bell icon, because there are many more secrets waiting to be uncovered. This is only the beginning, and together we will bring the ancient world back to life.